I had zero software experience in the past. I'd done a little bit of coding with Python, but that was about it. And essentially, ChatGPT taught me how to build the app, and then ChatGPT provided the main functionality for the app. So it was pretty much entirely built by and on ChatGPT.
I'm kind of mind blown by that. So wait, you built this app that's doing millions of dollars and you just built it by asking ChatGPT how to do it? Welcome to Superhuman AI, Decoding the Future, where you'll learn what's happening in AI and how you can use it. I'm your host, Zain, and today I'm joined by Blake Anderson. As far as I know, Blake's the only entrepreneur in the world that's built multiple apps with ChatGPT that are doing millions in revenue. In this conversation, I'll ask Blake how he did it and how you can do the same. For this episode, I'm joined by my co-host Hassan. Enjoy. Blake, thank you so much for coming on the pod, man.
Thank you very much for having me, Zain.
Yeah, for the listeners, I have Blake with me here, and I also have my co-host and co-founder Hassan on the podcast as well. So we'll just dive right in. Blake, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what Umax is?
Sure. So I think I could start with the high level where I'm at currently. I founded Umax. Umax is a looks maxing mobile application. It enables you to scan your face, get ratings and recommendations on how to become more attractive. We launched start of December of last year, so 2023. We're at a little bit over $6 million in ARR. Before that, I built RizGPT, which is now named PlugAI. That was launched in July of 2023. It's an AI dating assistant that is at $2.5 million in ARR. And I'm happy to dive a little bit more into my background from the top, if you'd like.
Yeah, 100%. I'd love to hear more about, what is it that you were doing before Umax?
Yeah, I think the best place to start here is as a child. I've always been fascinated by entrepreneurship and money as a whole. At the age of 7, I wrote a book titled How to Make Money as a 7-Year-Old. This was an ebook that was unfortunately never published. But that was kind of the start of my journey. Throughout childhood, I mowed lawns, I raked leaves, I shoveled driveways. I sold candy in school. I ran bots on RuneScape to generate coins for me, which I would then sell on a third-party marketplace. I built an Ethereum mining machine. I sold counterfeit jerseys on eBay. I would pay Instagram meme pages $2 to promote my jersey. So I guess entrepreneurship has kind of always been in my blood. That then led to college, where I honestly spent the majority of my time partying and just hanging out with friends. Towards the end of college, I'd been working on a somewhat failed college marketplace app, incredibly difficult product to scale. And I'm graduating and I need to find a way to make money. I had a roommate that was always asking me what he should say to girls on dating apps. So I figured that I could just build a ChatGPT wrapper for it. And that's kind of what led to the advent of RizGPT, which brings us to where we are today.
Like, how did you start building AI applications?
So as we all know, ChatGPT came out end of November 2022, start of December. I was taking a course, The History of the Digital Revolution, taught by Walter Isaacson at Tulane, where I attended. And what was interesting was I had started playing around with GPT-3, like the GPT-3 API, just a couple months before ChatGPT came out. And I was kind of like, whoa, this is crazy. Why is nobody talking about this? But nobody was talking about it. So I figured maybe it's actually not as cool as I think it is. But I continued playing around with it. Then ChatGPT comes out and I'm taking this class with Walter Isaacson. And something that got me really excited was seeing how excited he was about it. This is a man that has an incredibly prolific career documenting the stories of the greatest technologists of our time. And his eyes lit up like a kid seeing candy. He was like, this is incredible. And we pretty much spent the entire class just talking about how these new AI technologies would impact the future of the world. At this time, I'm working on this college marketplace app, no AI integration. But there was something within me where I was like, this is incredible. I have to build around this. When I was graduating and I knew that I had to make money somehow, I was like, it's clear that I have to do something in AI. And so that was kind of the origination of my deciding to work in this AI consumer space.
Interesting. So you said your first thing was called RizGPT, and now it's called PlugAI. So a lot of folks listening probably haven't heard the word looks maxing or even Riz. So for folks who are listening in, can you explain how you found the idea for RizGPT, and then how did you build it?
So the idea for it came from a roommate who would ask me what to say to girls on dating apps. And, at the time I'm using ChatGPT all the time. And I'm like, I wonder what ChatGPT would say to this. So we manually typed in the transcript and the response was very AI-like. But I started thinking about it through prompt engineering and I'm like, why would I not be able to prompt engineer this such that the responses are good? And so we started playing around and ended up doing a pretty good job. And this is right at the end of school, right as I'm graduating. And I'm like, I think that there's opportunity here. I'm going to build a wrapper that helps people with what to say on dating apps. At the time, I ended up finding out there was an incumbent, the Riz app. But they hadn't gone viral. They weren't very popular, mainstream. So decided to go ahead and build it. I had zero software experience in the past. I'd done a little bit of coding with Python, but that was about it. And essentially, ChatGPT taught me how to build the app, and then ChatGPT provided the main functionality for the app. So it was pretty much entirely built by and on ChatGPT.
Blake, I got to interrupt you there
And
because
then-
I just want to make sure I get this right. So are you telling me that you built this app with ChatGPT? Like ChatGPT told you how to build RizGPT and that's how it came about to be?
100%.
Holy cow.
In the past, people use Stack Overflow, right? I used 99% of the code was written by ChatGPT.
I'm kind of mind blown by that. So wait, you built this app that's doing millions of dollars and you just built it by asking ChatGPT how to do it?
Yeah, and I learned a little bit the first time around, but second time around when I built Umax, maybe not 99%, but maybe 85% of the code was still written by ChatGPT. It took me a couple of weeks, but ChatGPT took me all the way. So we've got the completed app and it comes time to launch. And I had brought on two co-founders to work with me on it. We were running marketing and nothing was really seeming to stick. And then I ended up finding this like untapped niche on TikTok. I paid $50 for two separate promos, so $100 total. And overnight, the thing just explodes. Over 200,000 downloads over the course of the next 6 days, $80,000 MRR right off the bat. And from there, it was off to the races. Now, mind you, we didn't have notifications implemented into the app. We didn't request reviews. It was the simplest app you could possibly imagine. Press a button, upload your screenshot, and get your responses. That's it. And so from there, we were kind of like backfilling all the knowledge that we probably should have learned before launching. But I think that this illustrates an important lesson in that you can learn that shit along the way. The most important thing is just like get your product out there, especially when it comes to these sort of consumer utility apps. Now, this doesn't apply if you're trying to build a social network, right? But if you're building a few function tool, there's no reason to delay the launch. It's like get it out there, get the insights, figure out whether or not it's going to work, and then you can backfill the things that you need to. So then over the course of the next couple of months, we scaled up to a little bit over $200,000 in MRR. And yeah, that's kind of the inciting story of RizGPT, now named PlugAI.
That's amazing, right? Like, and I think as you said, right, like to summarize, like just ship, get it out there, get the customer insights, customer feedback, and you can iterate and keep kind of building. One thing you mentioned, right? Like, so you guys were actually struggling initially to get those downloads. So it seems like you use your hustle you had built up over like several years of entrepreneurship to again find a niche. Like, what was kind of like the process for you to kind of like come across like you're like why TikTok? Why the like if someone is kind of thinking about like, hey, they're in this struggle phase for consumer utility app, what advice maybe you have for them?
I think that so I see a lot of one size fits all content on Twitter right now, telling people or specifically consumer founders about how to get their product out there. you need to use this TikTok strategy or this YouTube Shorts or this Instagram Reels, this Reddit, this X, whatever it may be. I'm of the opinion that, maybe there are certain strategies that are working better at certain points in time, but far and above the most important factor, I think, in generating some buzz, virality, views, is a ruthless cycle of iteration, just constant iteration, testing out new strategies. RizGPT took us a couple of weeks to figure it out. Umax, it took us a month and a half to really figure out the winning formula. The app that I'm currently working on, it's been over a month. We still haven't found it. Granted, we're doing well. We're at like 100K MRR right now. But I think that there are levels to it, right? And just because you cross that first threshold of like generating some views doesn't mean that you've figured out your final form. You need to keep iterating, I think, until you're finished with the company, essentially. When it comes to marketing consumer products, you just have to always be iterating.
I couldn't agree more. I just want to zoom in and double click a little bit on what you said about building an app with ChatGPT, because I think a lot of folks who are listening to this are just going to be like, wow, you can build an app with ChatGPT, and they're probably wondering how. So can you walk me a little bit through the process? You said that it took you 2 weeks. Can you tell me the process of building an app with ChatGPT and how you'd go about it again?
Yeah, so I said 2 weeks. It was actually probably more like 1 month. And I think that the reason that it wasn't quicker was primarily just because I wasn't familiar with the various IDEs. But if I were to go back and do it again, specifically consumer mobile application, you start with the designs. You need to figure out what you want the product to look like, right? Then you go and you need to figure out where you're going to code it. Are you going to do React Native? Are you going to do Swift UI? Are you going to build Kotlin as well, right? These are all important questions from the jump. But beyond that, getting ChatGPT to actually produce the product, you just have to be very clear in your language of what you're looking for, right? So if I have a design with RizGPT initially, it was a gradient background with a logo and 2 buttons. So you just explain that very clearly to ChatGPT. What's really cool now is that beyond just explaining, you can also upload an image, a screenshot of that design, and be like, hey, this is the design I want to build. This is the functionality I need for these individual buttons. Can you please write the code for me? So I've built my apps in Swift UI. And so I'm asking ChatGPT to write the Swift code. I paste that into Xcode. I preview. Maybe it didn't get the spacing right between 2 buttons. And then either I'll go in and adjust that myself, or I'll ask ChatGPT to adjust that. And so I think that the key takeaway here really is that it's a lot easier than you think, right? You just have to start. You just have to ask ChatGPT. And early on, there are going to be the growing pains of figuring out how to use the IDE and figuring out why your code won't compile. But the rate of learning is incredible. It's like you have your own professional tutor right at your fingertips. And so many people are not utilizing it.
I love it, right? Like you're building apps on top of like GPT and using GPT to kind of like fuel this. That's like an amazing flywheel you have kind of found for yourself. So Blake, like curious to know, like, like, are you just like doing this on your own? You have some co-founders, you build a team. And one thing I would love for you like to understand for the even for the audience is like what's like how do you decide like who to partner with? Like, like folks you want to hire, bring on, like what's kind of like your kind of metrics?
If only I had the answer to that final question about what really makes a great partner. I've worked with a number of great people. I think that everyone has their own distinct, unique qualities of greatness. I don't have a formula for that yet. When it comes to who do I work with, so RizGPT, once again, it's now named PlugAI. I'm going to keep referring to it as RizGPT. RizGPT, I brought on 2 of my co-founders from the college marketplace app. So it was the 3 of us. After a few months, one of the other co-founders and I kind of had a difference in creative vision of where the product should go. So we split amicably. I left, I retained my equity, and that's when I started building Umax. For Umax, I was pretty much a solo founder. And then I brought on my older brother. He is actually the one that came up with the Madden style rating system, which turned out to be the most pivotal decision for the trajectory of the company. I then brought on an influencer as a co-founder as well. So I think it's really situation based in terms of who I choose to work with. It's like, what's the right person for this role? What are the gaps here, maybe in my skill set that someone else can provide? I think that there's a lot of dialogue about how being a solo founder is best, and specifically like the indie hacker community. Now, that said, I think it might be Mark Cuban. I don't know who said this, but 85% of a watermelon is better than 100% of a grape, right? I think a good statistic example here is like, imagine you make 80% of decisions correct and another individual makes 80% and there's no overlap there, then you're going to make 96% of decisions correct when you combine y'all's skill set, right? And that can do wonders for the outcome of a company.
Tell me a little bit about Umax. I know you've done RizGPT. You said that you had some differences with the co-founders. You want to go do your own thing. How do you find the idea for Umax? And can you tell everyone a little bit about what the app is and who it's for and what's the problem that it's solving for folks?
Yeah. I can start with my leaving RizGPT. This occurred around middle to end of October in 2023. And so I left just like that. And, I had income coming from RizGPT, but by all intents and purposes, I was unemployed, right? I didn't have anything specific that I was working on. At the same time, I was living at home and I was going through a pretty difficult situation with my family. While I was running RizGPT, I was going to work at Starbucks 1 or 2 miles away. Sometimes my mom would drive me. Sometimes I would walk there and back while I'm running this company doing like 200K MRR. And so I spent most of November hopping from friends' couches and then living on my brother's couch. All the while I'm ideating. And I'd seen looks maxing was growing a lot in popularity. It kind of seemed to me to be the next step in like the whole lifting social media content. At the end of the day, the majority of guys work out or lift to appeal more to women, or specifically like teenage young adult men. And looks maxing to me kind of just cut right through that. It's like, okay, let's not say we're just doing this to improve ourselves, whatever. Let's just try to become more attractive. And that was really interesting to me. So I dove deep into the niche. I saw how much it was growing. I was like, okay, I'm going to become a student of the game here. I started engaging in all of the content. I started to try to think like somebody who was interested in looks maxing. And some of the common problems that I noticed were people wanted to know how attractive they were. There were entire subreddits devoted to this. People would comment on social media posts. Can you rate me? That sort of thing. And then second, people wanted personalized tips. Or I should say people wanted tips. And this was apparent on social media, but the tips provided were not personalized. And around this time, the GPT Vision API was coming out. I was like, I don't necessarily have to train an ML model in order to analyze an individual's face and provide recommendations. I can just prompt engineer this. So I started playing around with it, and it was doing a surprisingly good job. It gave me recommendations to shave my beard when it was a little bit patchy, gave me recommendations for skincare when I had some acne on my forehead. The light bulb just went off. I was like, I have to build this. So I back at the grindstone again, started talking to ChatGPT. All right, round 2. And kind of within a month of inception, I guess a month and a few days, we launched. This was 2 days after Thanksgiving, I believe. I spent Thanksgiving alone coding. I actually had a turkey breast or turkey leg that I cooked myself. And then, within the first month, so throughout December, we did about $100,000 in revenue. January, first half of the month, we were at around 200K MRR, slowly growing. And then we had a complete copycat, like 100% just copied everything that I did. And my plan up to this point was like, I wanted to continue growing, but I didn't really prioritize trying to go as viral as possible because I wanted to improve the LTV. I wanted to improve our offering before burning the forest, right? Getting through all of our core users. So we had done a couple 100,000 downloads at this point. I was going slow, making product improvements, what have you. Competitor comes onto the scene, copies our app, copies our marketing strategy, the whole 9 yards. And mind you, at this point, we're a bootstrap startup, right? And I'm like, okay, this is a dangerous path that we're entering here. Either we continue to go slow and maybe they try to overtake us, or they do overtake us, or we fight back. And the reality is that fighting back meant, to some extent, decreasing the amount or the degree to which we could succeed in the long term, right? Because if we prioritize getting millions of downloads when the product isn't in its final form, then it'll be tough to reconvert those users. But given the state of the market, I was like, okay, we have to fucking do it. So within the course of 3 days, I deployed over $200,000 on an influencer campaign. This was crazy. This was like all of our revenue, all of our earnings up to this point deployed within 3 days. Thankfully, it ended up working. We went from 200,000 MRR to over 500,000 MRR within the course of like 5 days. We did 100,000 downloads one day, 90,000 the next day, $50,000 in revenue, 40,000, 15,000, 25,000. And so that period was crazy. I wasn't sleeping at all. I was just 24/7 on the phone with influencers, coding, working with my engineer, talking to my social media manager. And yeah, since then we've been pretty like we were growing, we hit this crazy peak, and then we've kind of just been coasting at a little bit over 500K MRR.
Nice. So Blake, like that was like a lot of great information for our audience, like, like a crazy journey. So like you kind of have this idea, and I want to summarize this because I think it's very important for audience to like kind of understand like how your journey went. You were struggling like after you left, and you kind of ideating an idea, like like entrepreneurship always has like those challenges, and people I think should understand that. And then like once you find a niche, you're actually going deeper, like understand and really become like someone who understands it like better than 99.9% people. You spend the effort, figure it out. You had a playbook for ChatGPT, so you're taking the lessons from your past experience. And as always, right, like you always run into competitors, and you did that. But you made a bold decision to kind of take the risk of taking all of your revenue and just investing that into. So like, obviously, like it's a very tough decision. So like one question here, like, what was going through your mind? Like, hey, if this doesn't really work out, like what is plan B? That's kind of like the first question. And then the second question is that like, as you were kind of like, how would you motivating your team through this process? I think those are kind of the two things I would love to understand.
In regards to plan B, yeah, I'm a very risk-taking individual. There is never a plan B. It's like either this fucking works or like it goes bad. And if it goes bad, we'll assess that then. Like when I graduated from school, no income. I don't come from much money. Like my brother was giving me loans to pay for groceries while I was building RizGPT.
You're like a true entrepreneur, like really true entrepreneur.
100%. Yeah, it's always like doubled down. I took the money from RizGPT, funneled that into Umax. Going to be taking the money from Umax, funneling that into my next big play, right? And so, yeah, no plan B. In regards to how do I motivate employees, I don't have it 100% solved, but I'm a very passionate person as a whole. And I think that we should play to who we are and not try to embody somebody else. Believe me, I can be very hard at times. I can be difficult to work with. I can be stubborn as hell. But I always really care about what I do. And I care about trying. And I think that presents itself to everybody that I work with.
You said that you're working on something else as well. Do you want to share a little bit about that, or is that a sort of like under the wraps and a secret at this point?
Yeah, I'm happy to share about it. It's so it is called CalAI. It is an AI calorie tracking application. Generally, I wouldn't share something this early on. However, we're going up against a lot of incumbents. We already have like 50 big competitors. So I figure that if someone copies us, it's like you're not just competing with me, you're competing with all these incumbents. In addition to the fact that I think that this is the sort of space where like it's so hard to succeed. If someone's able to beat us, good for them. I think that that's highly improbable. So CalAI. The thesis here is calorie trackers take a lot of time. They're really annoying. I personally, everyone that I've used, I quit after a couple of days because it just takes too much goddamn time. So take a picture, get the calorie analysis. In addition to all of the other functionalities that current calorie trackers have, you can still scan barcodes, you can manually input macros, but the key differentiating feature here being the ability to take a picture. I have two other co-founders on this. This is interesting. They're both 17 years old. We all have equal ownership. Zach Yadagari and Henry Langmack. These kids are absolute killers. They're unbelievable. And so, yeah, this is kind of my newest venture. Umax is still my main priority, but CalAI it's growing quickly. We're at about 100K MRR right now, and a lot of upside here.
I saw a tweet that you posted recently, and you said, if you weren't locked into GPT-4, you'd definitely be building on top of GPT-4o at this point, the one that just got launched with, for listeners who might know, it's the updated version of GPT-4, where it comes with audio and assistant-like features as well. So I think the obvious idea, if you had to start again or go build something new with GPT-4o, what are like the sort of problem spaces you would look at, or what are some ideas you try to build?
I think that there's a lot of opportunity building in the audio simulation space, right? I think that people are becoming increasingly antisocial, and the primary method of socialization right now is like typing, right? It's very anti-human in my eyes, and so I think that building the not just dating simulation, but also just like social simulation, decreasing this anti-socialization that has occurred over the past decade or two. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. I think learning is something I'm super interested in. So the classic example here is like a tutor, a language tutor. I've played around with the current GPT-4, audio interface in the app right now, and it's decent. But from what I can tell about GPT-4o, it's gonna blow it out of the water, right? It's natively multimodal. I could probably get that functionality just out of the ChatGPT app when they implement the 4.0 voice model, right? I probably don't need a separate app for it. I tweeted about this the other day, though. That may be the case, and I might understand that, and I might not need to use a separate app, but the vast majority of people will. They won't know that they can leverage that sort of functionality within the ChatGPT app. And so just because you can do something natively within the ChatGPT app or within any sort of LLM does not mean that there is not a massive amount of opportunity to just package it or reskin it. And so one step further in learning, recently I've been studying complex systems, right? I like to study various fields just to like try to continue becoming smarter. I don't know that the consumer app space is necessarily widening my knowledge in deep tech, right? Or true academic pursuits. I've been using ChatGPT to augment my learning. I'm having it quiz me from time to time on where my knowledge is currently at, and then provide me resources on the things that I should then go further and learn about, right? So I'm using this in the text interface, but I was driving the other day and I'm like, damn, I want to do this right now. And I tried doing it with the current GPT-4 voice architecture, and it wasn't great. But I was like, GPT-4o would probably be pretty good at this. And so I think setting up a sort of application that enables where I don't have to custom tell it like, okay, quiz me on this and now provide me with these resources, right? Creating an application that does that natively would be pretty awesome and something that I would use all the time and pay for.
How are you kind of like, if you were kind of advising some entrepreneurs who are building in this space, like what are maybe 3 things you would tell them to think about as they're trying to build?
I would say deviate from the norm, right? I think deviate with what you think, what you say, and what you do. I think specifically in this like SF Silicon Valley sort of tech bubble, We hear the same things. People talk about the same novel concepts, or the same concepts, which make them increasingly less novel. And I think it's easy to get caught into the echo chamber, but true, unique, and creative insights come when you pull yourself outside of that bubble and you really think for yourself. I think that there are a lot of different functionalities that people talk about that are going to be built in the future. And as a result, you have a disproportionate number of people working on them, as opposed to people working on the things that not many people are talking about. And although I don't have a very clear-cut example off the top of my mind, I don't think that anyone was talking about an AI looks maxing app when I built it, right? And so I think a lot of the alpha lies when you push past the veil of the public domain.
No, I totally agree with you there. I want to end the conversation on a fun question. So again, I saw another tweet of yours where you talked about Civilization 5, the game, the strategy game, if anyone's heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit about why you think playing video games makes you a better entrepreneur?
I think that video games provide the ability to engage in like an economic or strategic simulation and get repetition across repetition rapidly, right? I can simulate, for example, Sims, as you mentioned earlier, Hassan. You can simulate an individual's life in the course of a number of hours, right? And the various trade-offs of entering into this career rather than this career. They are incredible learning opportunities to get those repetitions without having to put real capital, real time, or real stakes on the line.
Yeah, 100%. I played a lot of strategy games back in the day, more around like Age of Empires and Red Alert and things like those. But yeah, those, just we're
Counter-Strike, Age of Empires.
Yeah, we're both revealing our age.
Just like 2 years ago, which is disappointingly recent, I was addicted to Age of Empires 4 for a little bit once it got released.
So good. Blake, this has been awesome. You're clearly a very smart person, but I think you're also a very original builder. I think a lot of folks will look at, what's trending on the App Store or what's going viral on TikTok, and they'll go ahead and try to build that. But it seems like a lot of your building stems from who you are as a person. You talked about self-improvement, about nutrition, about exercising, and it seems like you really leaned into those. And, all of your creativity stems from your true passion, it appears. So yeah, man, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing all this, honestly, just dope knowledge with us. And yeah, hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, man. Thank you so
Zain,
much.
Hassan, pleasure to meet you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me on this conversation. This episode is a part of a short series that I'm recording. If you want me to continue these episodes and you want me to record more of them, let me know. You can drop me a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify Podcasts or wherever it is that you get your podcasts, or you can just email me directly at zain@superhuman.ai. That's ZAIN@superhuman.ai. Thanks for listening again, and I'll catch you again next week. Bye-bye.